Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the Home Depot Guitar Kit Challenge, where myself and Big D Guitars are going head to head building these SG kits from Solo Music Gear using only stuff from Home Depot, Walmart, and your average everyday hardware store. So if you haven't seen the other videos, we are on part 6 now. So go back, check them out. You can check them out on my channel. There is a playlist there. And for those of you who haven't been following along, yeah, it's only tools and materials from Home Depot and Walmart, that sort of thing. No power tools except for a soldering iron. That is the one exception. That can be from wherever. So we've made some progress on this thing now. We're almost done. We've got our planet theme on the front with a nice semi-gloss finish. It's looking really good. We've got our hammered silver on the back. I went pretty smooth on it. If you apply it more heavily, it gets a little bit more hammered looking because, you know, it just makes sense. What other paint are you going to find out there that emulates kind of a moon theme, moon surface more than that? At this point, I'm in the process of waiting for the paint to dry on the Pickguard. So the Pickguard was actually going to cover up this moon entirely over here, and I couldn't have that, so I modified it. I'll show you that video footage in a minute, or a little bit of it, because frankly, it was the longest, most irritating process that I've ever been through in painting, and I never want to do it again. Doing something like that with power tools, pretty straightforward. Doing it by hand, it was awful. And frankly, a bit dangerous. So don't try that, and I'm gonna very much limit the footage that I show you of that, because don't do it. We're gonna dive right into it here, but really quickly before we do, I just want to acknowledge, you know, in order to do this, I had to go buy a bunch of stuff from Home Depot and whatnot to be able to complete this project. And I want to say a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters, because as I told you guys when I was setting that up, the money from that goes towards stuff like this. It goes towards getting the products that I need to be able to make these tutorials. So big thank you to those guys. Really appreciate it. You saved my butt in terms of being able to get everything that I needed to be able to get this project done. What we're going to do now is apply our finish to the neck. So I think, just to be on the safe side, I'm going to put down a little bit of shop towel where the front of the guitar goes and kind of hang the neck off the edge here. We're also going to do the back of the headstock. That's all natural right now. I didn't paint that per se. What I'm going to do is use a little bit of sandpaper and some stain. I like a more natural, more kind of distressed neck. I certainly don't like to play gloss necks. I find that my hand sticks to them, so I always avoid that. I think there's some sealer on this neck, so I don't anticipate the stain going in very well. It's going to give kind of that distressed feel. If you don't like that, paint it or sand all the way through the sealer very carefully, and go ahead and use a dye or a stain to do, you know, your more classic stain job. And then over that, I'm going to use some tung oil. Now there are a couple different things that you should know about tung oil. This one says pure tung oil on it. There's also polymerized tung oil that dries glossier and harder. Pure tung oil takes more coats and doesn't develop as much of a sheen. Oddly, I have found that this particular tung oil glosses up and kind of hardens a little bit more than I would have anticipated, as opposed to like the really pure tung oil that I get from Bellin when I want to do a very, very thin oil finish. So usually I use that stuff, but for the purpose of this project, I'm going with this circa 1850 product. I'm going to use sandpaper to start the application of my stain, and then I'll probably do another coat simply using a shop towel. For the tung oil, I'm going to keep that very thin. If you've ever seen my really old tutorial on how to apply a tung oil finish, I start out with a foam brush. Well, for this one, very thin, I'm going to do the same thing. A little bit of sandpaper, really kind of distress that, and then come in with a shop towel. So I will continue to explain this as necessary in voiceover as we go. So come on in here and let's get started. So to really get the brilliance started here, I went and put some stain on there before remembering to press record. But anyway, when I unboxed this kit, I sanded the back of the neck with 400 grit paper, and that got rid of some of that sealer, which allowed more of that stain to soak in on the first coat. So I apply a little bit with the rag, and then I go in with the sandpaper and kind of scrub it, if you will. And that gets some of it into the pores, creates some pores for it to go into, and, you know, remove some at the same time. And that's how I really get that distressed look. Then I come back in with the rag again and apply kind of another coat to darken things up a little bit here. I'm coming in with the tung oil right away after that. I didn't let this dry very long at all, maybe 20 minutes. It doesn't, frankly, take all that long to get to this state, and when I'm coming in with the oil and the sandpaper after anyway, I'm going to be removing some of it. I'm going to be moving some of it around with the oil, because of the type of look I'm going for here and the way that the oil finish plays with the oil-based stain, there's really no need for me to let it dry any longer than that. With the oil, I apply a similar technique in that I put a little bit of oil on there with the shop towel to begin with, and then I go in with the sandpaper and apply it with that, and it kind of creates a slurry that fills in all the grain and the pores and gives you a really, really smooth finish that feels really nice and comfortable to play. Then I go over it with the rag a few times after, and you can see me doing that. I'm cutting between these because I end up giving this thing about 20 minutes between coats of that as well. And I again come in with the sandpaper a couple times. So for the first couple coats, what I'll do is I'll apply the oil wet, come in with the sandpaper, really make sure that everything is nice and smooth, wait a couple minutes for it to tack up a little bit, and then wipe off the excess with the rag. You've seen me do all that. And then afterward, like I said, I come in with the rag again and apply a couple more coats to get a really nice smooth finish. Now the plan for this guitar actually changed a little bit over the course of this video, and I will explain that more in a couple minutes, but for now, let's cut to the pickguard. This was stupid. So what I've decided here is that I'm cutting out the center of it and turning it into kind of the outline of a pickguard so that you can see the graphics underneath. Unfortunately, that's really bloody hard to do, and it's really bloody hard to do with hand tools in particular. So what I'm doing is I'm tracing this thing. Basically, I've drawn on a line with a pencil, and now I'm pushing as hard as I can while maintaining control and running this line with a sharp razor blade. And then I'm going to do that again and again and again. And essentially, as we progress through this, you're going to watch me go through the 12 phases, because right now I'm in denial. I'm in denial that this could possibly be this difficult, and that I could possibly be dumb enough to take on this task. This took an extremely long time. I don't even want to talk about it. Do not try this. I almost lost a finger probably at least twice. And this was a waste of my day. But eventually I made it through far enough that I could pop out that center section and start doing some even more dangerous stuff with a blade being used in ways that it never should. We all know we're not supposed to cut towards ourselves. Well, anyway, scraping with the blade was a good way to go ahead and smooth this edge out. Unfortunately, this thing is about as fragile as a politician's ego, so I was scared of breaking it all the time. I go in with a file to kind of try and smooth things out that way. Basically tried every hand tool that I could find at Home Depot. The rat tail file helped out a little bit. And this was, I won't call it a labor of love because I hated it. So it was a labor of hate. Luckily, I'm in a one-story building, so there was no high window to throw this thing out. But eventually, I very much considered giving up, and probably would have if I could find any other reasonable option to do this. So hours upon hours of filing and scraping and complaining, which I apparently didn't find to be enough complaining because now I'm doing it in video. Hours later, I got to the final stages where I was just sanding corners and stuff to smooth everything out. And then I have to scuff the top, which you see me doing here, again with 400 grit, so that it's ready for paint. The painting part of this was very straightforward. I kind of stuck to the theme and went with the hammered silver, but in this case I went with a notably heavier coat of it, and you'll see if you've watched before how smooth the back of the guitar is. You'll see here in just a few seconds that this heavier coat that I put on creates a stronger hammered effect, and you really get that hammered texture in there and kind of our moon surface look, if you will. Now, here's what I decided to do for the back of the headstock, and actually a small portion at the heel, which you'll see me get to in a second. I went with black for it, and this kind of was to, one, tie this in a little bit more to the front of the guitar, because I realized that the stained back of the neck wasn't really thematically appropriate, and also to give it kind of an extra little hint of that relic look. So you'll see what I end up with here. I build this hilarious tape wall along the back so that I can paint the heel without taping up the entire body. And I can't necessarily recommend this because you have to have good control of your paint can if you're not going to actually tape up the entire back of the body when you do something like this. But I create this tape wall and I'm careful not to spray past it. I have reasonable control of the can, and the front of the guitar is actually on a paper towel, which would absorb anything rather than bouncing it onto the front of the guitar. So we're pretty safe here. Then I do kind of just this tight little spray pattern around the heel and feather it up onto the back of the neck a little bit, almost like a burst on a neck if you've ever seen one of those. But really the intent here being to emulate the effect that you'd get from having the back of the neck painted black and just playing it for years and years and years. Now, as a cool little added trick here, the neck still needed a little bit of oil, so I put some oil on the rag and I used that not just to oil the back of the neck, but also to kind of feather out that black, spread it out a little bit, smudge it, kind of to make it look like it's worn off like we talked about a second ago, to give it that more relic look. The black near the headstock, a little bit drier, kind of feathered out smoother. And then down by the heel where you would really have your palm digging in there, I did that painting after, and I went at it with the oil in a shorter period of time here to give kind of a firmer rub line there, because again, to me that made sense that your hand would be kind of pushing up against there more aggressively and more consistently because it's the heel of your hand, so there'd be more kind of surface area for your skin to give a harder edge. Now I do continue to feather this out a bit because at first the line was too hard for my liking, and I come in with a cloth with no oil on it to kind of finish that off and give a smoother look. You know, I don't know why, even on these pristine looking guitars, I always like a neck that looks like it's been played for 25, 30 years, but I do. That's how I like the neck to feel, and that's how I like it to look for the most part. Looks kind of neat, as though the back of the neck was coated black and then, you know, through years and years of playing, got worn down. And the feel of the Tung Oil Finish is my favorite feel for a neck finish. I, of course, don't mind a finish that's been scuffed down or a matte or semi-gloss finish, but just, I don't know why. For some reason, that Tung Oil finish on the neck is my favorite. So that's what we've got for the middle portion, where it's going to be played a lot, and then the rest is just that matte black. This is basically done now in terms of finishing. This thing, I'm sure I complained about it enough already, so I won't continue, but that's going to be mounted on there, something along those lines, and it's going to continue to show off the important part, which are the graphics. So the rest of the hardware is black. This thing's barely dry at this point. Let me just give you a slightly better look at what this is going to look like on here, and yeah, that's about it. So that's what we're dealing with there. This thing's looking awesome in general as far as I'm concerned. The pickguard, well, I'm not a huge pickguard fan for the most part, but you know, that had the holes there already, so I needed kind of something. I don't mind that. I'll see how it looks when I get the whole thing assembled. I mean, worst case scenario, I can paint the screws and put them in just for effect. It'd be kind of odd, but it might look okay. Pickguards. Ugh. So that's it for this one, guys. Thank you for watching. As always, stay tuned. In our next video, we're going to get this guy put together and do a sound demo on it. I got to let everything dry a little bit, so that might be 2 weeks. We'll see. And then, you know, you can all tell me by how much you think I kicked Big D Guitars' butt in this contest. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found kind of the relicking tricks on the neck helpful, and I really hope you don't ever decide to do that to your pickguard by hand. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe so you can see the rest of this series. Check out the links in the description if you want any of the stuff that I used here, except for like the Home Depot stuff. Just go to Home Depot. But for sure, if you want the kit, take a look at the solo music gear link in the description. That's my affiliate link. Helps me out if you get it through there. Thanks. Have a good one. I will see you next time.